I got a guy on the channel today that I'm telling you, you're gonna wonder where I find these people. You're gonna, because I mean, it's not like it's brain scientists. I just do a little research and I find some people. And the good thing is, they happy to come on the channel. They like, yeah, I'll do it. Because I mean, it promotes them in some instances. It left them to share their knowledge that they want to do anyway. And this is going to be one of those examples where, you know, I'm promoting one of them tourist sites in Virginia. All right, I'm giving you a little lead in. So come on, people, subscribe to Strong Inspirations. You know who I am. I'm Anthony Brogdon. It's free to subscribe. So if you, I don't even know what the hesitation is, just hit the button and like this video. Like this video for sure. Hit the notifications bell so that you get a little ding when I put new videos up. And I'm averaging at least 4 videos a week. People calling me now. And then I do my research, you know, and then like I did with the guy that's our guest there. I did a little research, found him off. I don't know where I found it. I just did. And he said, okay, let's do it. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Because we come at you strong, straight, no chasing. I don't even tell it. I let them tell it because they know what they're saying. Oh, yeah, by the way, you know what I'm about to tell you. I got a movie out. I'm a filmmaker. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. It's incredible stuff, and this is 75 minutes long. It's slaves went to college, Black millionaires in the 1800s. What happened after the Civil War ended? It's that kind of thing in this film. And it's on Amazon. So you don't even have to buy this is the DVD, everybody. But you just stream it on your laptop, your iPhone, your iPad, whatever. You can get on your TV and watch my movie. And then, you know, I was so enamored with this that I had already started with the documentary. I wrote a book on it. And the book is titled Black Business Book. Now the documentary got some interviews with some people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. The book don't have that because it's all facts. It's 200 strong facts that's gonna come at you, boom. And I don't even write no commentary. I just give you the fact as it is. And we talk about the Civil War. Now this is the lead into my guest. You see what I'm doing, don't you, right? We talk about the Civil War and some of the battles in the Civil War in this book because it's so comprehensive. I cover a little bit of everything. And you're gonna be like, man, I don't believe that. I give you the reference in the back of the book where I got the fact. So you can just go back there and then I number them. So you can say, hey man, I don't believe number 99. It's in the back. You just go to the back and you find it. And the book is also on Amazon. But if you want to cut the big Amazon man out, and I don't care how you get it, just get it, then go to my website, inspirationsbystrong.com. So do either way. But without further ado, because my man, he's smiling, he's ready to get it going on the Strong Inspirations channel. So please introduce yourself and tell a little bit about who you are.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you for having me on today. My name is Tim Talbot. I'm the Director of Education and Interpretation at Pamplin Historical Park in the National Museum of the Civil War Soldier, which is just outside of Petersburg, Virginia.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I got questions. I'm shooting them at you real fast here. Where's Petersburg, Virginia?
Petersburg's about 25 miles south of Richmond.
Okay, and Richmond is really one of the hubs of all this, the battleground and that kind of thing, right?
No doubt. It was, of course, at the time, the capital of the Confederacy. Before that was capital of Virginia, and still is the capital of Virginia. So yeah. It's really important. Petersburg is, at that time, the second largest city in Virginia. So a lot of them, they had a lot in common, those two cities.
Now you say it's the capital of the Confederacy. Did they have a house, a Capitol House, the Confederacy, where they might have had a guy that they said, you kind of like our president, that kind of thing?
Yeah, the first capital of the Confederacy was actually in Montgomery, Alabama. Very early, in February of 1861. And then they decided they were going to move it to Richmond, which happened at the end of April, 1st of May of 1861.
Okay.
Actually used the state house that Virginia used for the capital of the Confederacy. And then they had an executive mansion called the Confederate White House, where Jefferson Davis lived and did a lot of his work.
Okay, now for my viewers, let's go back here. 1861, the Civil War, that's where it all happens. How long is it simmering in the federal, between the South and the North, where it's coming to a head that the South is saying we're going to subsede the country? How long is that thought going out there in the universe?
So historians have debated how long this sectional turmoil has happened. You know, some people take it back as far as when the North and the South were compromising over the Constitution and whether slavery was going to be a part of our country or not. But that's the issue that's causing the friction between the North and the South. Yeah. Now, there was slavery in the northern states that was gradually, eventually abolished, but it took its firm hold in the South due to its strong reliance on agriculture and the labor of enslaved people to that agricultural work.
Now, I had a guy on the show who said that there were battles in other parts of the country. Like, for example, I think he said Kansas, the state of Kansas, when it came on board, that there were people in the state that were already starting to shoot at each other.
Yeah, several years before the Civil War, Kansas becomes known as Bleeding Kansas because they have been asked to come into the Union, or they're trying to come into the Union. And it's a territory, so they don't have enough people yet to make it a state. So Southerners are going into Kansas, Northerners are going into Kansas, and they're having a mini Civil War in 1854, 1855, 1856 over this issue of whether Kansas is going to be admitted to the state or a free state.
Okay, so that's kind of wild. So now Petersburg is just outside of Richmond. Richmond is the capital. Are there a lot of people in Richmond who are a part of the Confederacy? I mean, what's that percentage? Is everybody saying, because I live here, I like slavery, or there's some, I'm talking about white Southerners saying, no, this is not good, but I live here and I'm gonna just deal with it?
Now, the vast majority of the people who lived in Richmond at the time of the Civil War were very supportive of the Confederacy and what they were trying to accomplish. There were a few people, free Black people, some Northern-born white people, and even some native Richmonders who felt more loyalty to the Union. A famous example was Elizabeth Van Lew, who was a white woman who lived there in Richmond, and she was funneling military information to General Butler and General Grant as they were fighting around Petersburg and Richmond. So,
okay, those generals are Northern generals for the Union.
Yes.
So she down there kind of spying and telling them stuff.
Yes, very much so. And she even had a free African-American woman who was working in the Confederate White House. She was there getting information directly to her and then onto the Union side to help them plan their strategy.
So so they didn't know that she was telling. She's standing there. Come on, let me dust off the table where y'all meeting at. She's looking at the plans and oh, really?
Yeah. See, that's the thing people don't understand about history, is this complexity of it. And that's what makes it so interesting. We always want to make all Northerners abolitionists, all Southerners are, pro-slavery, and the vast majority of them were. But there's a lot of gray area in there too that makes history so fascinating.
Okay, how did they come up with their flag? Who did the flag for the Confederacy?
So, as far as there were actually several different designs of flags for the South. The first national flag was a combination of red, white, and red bars, and that is actually what's known as the Stars and Bars. They're going to eventually change to a different national flag in 1863, which is a total white field and then has the small battle flag that we're all familiar with up in the corner. And then lastly, at the last of the war, they're going to actually put a red stripe on the end of that white field to make the third national flag. Now, the one the soldiers use, or the one you're probably familiar with, is the Confederate battle flag.
Right.
That's the one that's most popular.
And that was the second one.
Yeah.
That was the second one.
See, that
So
used a lot
now,
of-
one more question on this before we, get into where you work at and that kind of thing. Who is the head guy? Who's the guy that's the face of the Confederacy?
So that would either be Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy.
He's the president. Okay.
Yeah. Or Robert E. Lee, who is commanding the Army of Northern Virginia, and winning a lot of battles, especially early in the war from 1862 and 1863. Robert E. Lee is the face of the Confederacy, even probably more so than Jefferson Davis is.
Well, now what is Jefferson Davis? Was he a senator or something before he became the president of it?
Yes, he was a senator from Mississippi. He was actually a colonel in the Mexican-American War, and he was Secretary of War before the South seceded. So
for the whole country.
For the whole country.
Yeah. Okay, but he just happened to live in that area, and then he decides to do this. Now, when you talk about how did they come up with Confederacy? Or where does that term come from?
Well, they wanted a confederacy is a union of states, but yet each state maintains supposedly its own sovereignty.
Okay.
Whereas in a federal union, those states relinquish some of their sovereignty to the federal nation.
I got you. Okay, I got you.
Now, a lot of that gets thrown out though because of the necessities of war.
Okay. Now, when they talk about the Confederacy, this president decides. Does he have a cabinet, or is he just kind of a one-man person? Does he actually establish a government?
Yes. Yeah, they write a constitution, borrowing largely from the United States Constitution, but editing in some things that they want to make sure is known. But if you line up the Confederate Constitution with the U.S. Constitution at the time, in a lot of ways, they're very, very similar.
They just put in a line, we're going to have some slaves down there.
That's one of the things that they make explicit, yes.
Wow. And so do they have, are they happy people? I mean, do they get around themselves and they say, oh, well, I know what we're doing is kind of wrong. Maybe we don't know it's wrong. We've justified it in our mind. And are they happy people that, live, I guess, I don't know if that's a question or not, but I'm just wondering, yeah.
Yeah, I think they fully support the idea of forming a nation of their own. They're sort of, a lot of them feeling that they're carrying on the tradition of their forefathers who broke away from England and formed the United States.
Okay.
When they see the United States are not upholding, as they, from their viewpoint, certain things like the fugitive slave law and things like that, they feel it's their right to break away and form their own country. Of course, with slavery being that bedrock foundation.
Now, I guess maybe one more. My questions coming up like this, and one more question. So, but I didn't know, like the Mason-Dixie line. I was driving to Washington D.C. and I saw a marker that said the Mason-Dixie line. Now, there was the Confederacy. There was not one line. I know it wasn't a straight line that said everything below this is slave owning, and this is where we're going to secede. But because there were some options even in the same state. How would they have divided that? If they would have had their way, how would they have divided that up?
So if they would have had their way, they would probably had even those border states like Kentucky, Missouri, and Maryland. They allowed slavery in those states, but they did not formally secede. If the Confederacy had their way, they would probably had those states come with them and had that line. The Mason-Dixon line actually separates Maryland from Pennsylvania, and that was done earlier in the 19th century.
Okay.
That's the dividing line between slavery and free states.
Did they were they as sophisticated where they had a tax system? Did they have their own money and all that kind of? Did they get that far down the road?
Yeah.
Really?
Importing vast amounts of material, largely in exchange for cotton, with places like England. So if they needed rifles or cannon, uniforms, shoes, they're importing vast amounts of that in trade for largely cotton. Now that comes to a halt when the North starts putting a blockade on the southern ports, but there's still ships slipping through that blockade, bringing things that the Confederacy needs.
Oh my God! Yeah, so they had their own money, maybe, huh? Is that what you said too?
Their own currency. Yeah, a lot of that still survives now. Of course, it's totally worthless.
Yeah,
Other
sure.
factors, but they had their own monetary system.
And did they have that president's picture on their money or something? Was it somebody's picture on the money?
Yeah, sometimes they would put famous people. George Washington, for instance, was considered a Southerner by the Confederates. So his image is actually used on the Confederate seal. But famous people as well, like John C. Calhoun, Southerners, they're on the money as well.
Oh, really? Okay, I
It's
didn't know
depicted
that.
on the
So
money.
now we get to a point where we're gonna have a war. We're going to war. When do they start thinking about war? Is there some saying we starting to think about it? Y'all been talking and doing too much. It's coming ahead.
Yeah, well, finally, when the southern states start seceding, there's eventually 7 southern states, the deep South states, that secede first, and South Carolina starts that ball rolling. And then when the federal government will not leave Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, the state of South Carolina claims Fort Sumter as their own, but when the federal government refuses to leave Fort Sumter, the Confederates fire on it on April 12th, 1860.
Right, and that's the start.
That's usually considered the start of the war.
Yeah. So, do the people? But Fort Sumter is along the coastline, so even though people around them might be Southerners, they have ships and stuff that can get down there and bring people, supplies, what have you.
Yeah.
On Fort Sumter, right? Okay. So now, do the people in Fort Sumter know that? Hey, were they caught off guard when they started firing the cannons at them?
No, they kind of knew it was coming. They left the main shore to Fort Sumter because they thought they would be more protected there at Fort Sumter. And then when they started being fired on, I think it lasts for the firing for about a day and a half before finally they don't have any other food. They don't have any other chance. So the commander there, a guy named Anderson, Major Anderson, surrenders the fort to the Confederates.
Oh, he surrendered. Oh my God. So what did they do with all the people in the fort? They held them captive?
They let them go back to the north.
Oh, they did. But to go back to the north, they had to get on a ship to get there. They ain't let them travel by land though, did they?
No, they sent them by ship.
Oh, okay. So now the war's on. After that battle, when is the next battle?
Well, there's several smaller engagements that happen down near Fort Monroe, Virginia. But the big next battle is up near Washington, D.C., Bull Run or Manassas.
And that battle is out of battles. Do they start by a northern force coming to attack a southern force, or vice versa, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. In this instance, President Lincoln is pushing the Union Army to actually go do something, and they start moving out of Washington, D.C. into Virginia, and the Confederates try to block them. And that's what sort of precipitates that battle at Bull Run on July 21st, 1861.
Maybe how many people are killed in that battle, did they say?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. But it's a bunch of people. I'm sure they're shooting at.
Yeah.
They're shooting at folks and stuff like that. When there's a battle, and this goes into your place. When there's a battle, and I just happen to run into where you are? Do I have spies telling me where you are? I'm sure it's a little bit of both. How does the battle begin at the beginning?
There's usually some sort of strategic objective, like a road that they're trying to get to or a railroad that they're trying to cut. And that's certainly the situation here in Petersburg. There's 5 different railroads coming in and out of Petersburg serving the Confederacy. And General Grant knows that if he cuts those railroad lines, those supplies funneling through Petersburg to Richmond will be cut off. So he starts cutting these wagon roads and railroads coming into Petersburg, sort of like the spokes of a wheel. And he's trying to get to the last railroad, which runs west out of Petersburg. And in his way are the Confederate forces in earthworks where our park is today. And he does some scouting ahead and finds a weak spot that he wants to attack. And on the morning of April 2nd, 1865, he sends about 14,000 men forward, and they break through the Confederate line where our park is today and force the evacuation of Petersburg and Richmond.
Now, okay, hold on. So now, are there a lot of battles happen simultaneously, or maybe, and I suspect there were, but are there just a battle over there in South Carolina, someplace different, and they happen throughout the year? How many battles maybe happen over the 4 years? Is there a number?
Oh, Lord. And again, it sort of depends on what you call a battle. Sometimes there's small skirmishes or engagements, or they run into each other. Other times they're full-blown battles with thousands of men. But yeah, they're happening in multiple places because both sides have forces in different parts of the South. So they have an Eastern theater, which is mainly here in Virginia. They have a Western theater, which is basically everything from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River. And then they have what's known as the Trans-Mississippi Department, which is, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. And there's armies for both sides fighting in all those different areas. So the big famous battle that's happening at the same time is in 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg being fought in Pennsylvania, and the Battle of Vicksburg down in Mississippi. Both end up being Union victories.
When they have these battles, how long does a battle, I know they're different times, but how long may a battle last? I know it's different timings, yeah, but.
It kind of depends on who's willing to give up, or maybe if they're cut off from their supplies, they have to retreat back, or if they've inflicted so many casualties they cannot continue to fight. The Battle of Antietam in Maryland was the bloodiest one day of the Civil War, with about 23,000 casualties.
Ooh.
Killed, wounded, and missing. That's 1 day fight. But then the Battle of Gettysburg is going to be a 3-day fight. And you're talking 55,000.
Whoa, that's a lot of people.
55,000, yeah.
So, okay, you got 55,000 or 30,000. How many people were in the battle? I mean, what's that number? How does that percentage work out?
Both forces are pushing close to 100,000 men.
Oh, man. How did the men get there?
Most of them walked.
So they walked from Washington, D.C. or whatever, all the way down to this battle.
Yeah, in Gettysburg. Now in Vicksburg, the forces were already out there in Mississippi fighting. Vicksburg was kind of like Petersburg out west. It was very important because it was choking or blocking the traffic on the Mississippi River.
Okay, I'm in the north, and I come down to wherever you say the battle in Gettysburg. I walk all the way from wherever the camp is down to this battle, which takes 10 days to do the walk, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. And one thing we don't really think about too much is what it takes to supply an army. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of wagons, thousands of horses and mules pulling those wagons, choking the roads with all kinds of traffic and dust.
And then you got to get the guns to them and the clothing and that kind of thing too.
Yep.
So it's a strategic, planned out move that all this happens.
It all relies on the logistics to be supplied.
Is there, do the Confederate and the Northern, are they known for a different type of uniform so you're shooting at the right guy?
Yeah, now early in the war, that's kind of confusing because some Confederates are wearing blue and some Union soldiers are wearing gray from their militia uniforms before the war. But they finally standardized the uniform for the most part, where Confederates are wearing a gray or brownish color known as butternut. And then the Union forces are wearing a navy blue coat and sky blue pants. So you sort of know each other.
So you know who to shoot at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of an instance where one guy, he's a bad dude, like, Zorro kind of guy or something like that. And he goes out and he takes 5 guys with him, and he might disguise himself, and he goes out to some part and kills 15, 20 Confederates. Are there, or is it always an army or group of soldiers?
No, they have both sides incorporate to a certain degree guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Especially the Confederate sides, which try to ride behind the Union lines and capture supplies or tear up railroad tracks and things like that. John Mosby's probably the most famous Confederate guerrilla operating up in Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C.
And he has how many people with him, maybe?
Oh, he operates with maybe 100, 150 guys usually, sometimes even smaller.
Oh, okay. So they had some of those kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a guy and I live in the South. I don't want to go to the war. How do you recruit me? Are you telling me you got to do it? How do you recruit? How do they recruit the Confederate soldiers?
At the beginning of the war, both sides relied on people volunteering for the service. But eventually, when those first year enlistments for the Confederacy ran out, 12 months ran out, they were afraid the Army was going to dissolve and nobody would re-enlist. So they start the process of drafting soldiers. This is the first war in American history where both sides are going to be drafting soldiers. It's called conscription at that time. And if you're between the ages of, in the Confederacy, 17 to 35 is the first conscription, you have to serve unless you have an exemption of some kind, physical, or you have a job that's necessary back home.
Do the people that serve are they and they have to serve? I hear there was a lot of deflections or something like that. Hey man, okay, I saw one battle, I'm out of here, that kind of thing.
Now, especially late in the war, there are soldiers that are worn down. They're getting information from their families back home that they need their help, and they're deserting in large numbers from around here at Petersburg. Especially the North Carolina soldiers, because now not only are they facing the Union Army here at Petersburg, but General Sherman has been to Savannah, and now he's working his way up through South Carolina into North Carolina. And he's making war not only on Confederate soldiers, but he's also trying to ruin infrastructure. So he's burning mills, whatever's in the way, he's taking for his army to use.
Okay, now there are like how many Northern generals would you say? How many Southern generals? Is there a number of that?
Oh, hundreds, because you've got different kinds of generals. You've got brigadier generals who's in charge of a brigade. You've got major generals who are usually in charge of a division.
I got you.
And then you have lieutenant generals, which are over the corps or armies. So you're talking hundreds of generals on both sides.
But of the main generals, you say General Lee or the other ones, how many of those main guys? Are there three of them that sit at the top and strategize what to do?
Well, you've got your main General Lee for the Confederacy and the Army of Northern Virginia.
Right.
But then you also have, for the Union side, you have General Grant, and he has several subordinate generals underneath.
I got you. I got you. So so they're doing this. How many people would you say were actually, if they got an idea, how many in the war? How many Southerners, how many Northerners were in the war?
So the estimated figure is that there's about 3 million men who fought in the Civil War, about 2 million for the North and about 1 million for the South.
So the North had many more people. They had double the soldiers.
Yeah, there were about 22 million people in the North in 1860 and about 11 million in the South. And of course, 4 million of those people in the South were enslaved individuals, which the South's not going to allow African Americans to serve in the Army ranks.
Oh, okay. So now, when you're in this battle, is the battle mostly, is it shooting your gun to kill somebody? Is there hand-to-hand combat?
Again, just sort of depends on the situation. Most of the time they're fighting at such distances, there's not hand-to-hand fighting, but there are occasions where they get close enough to where they're swinging their muskets, they're lunging with their bayonets, they're hitting with their fists, they're biting each other.
Really?
Some very ferocious combat at different places in the Civil War, like the Battle of Spotsylvania, Kennesaw Mountain, some other places like that.
Wow, so that's even hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
My gosh. And so I've asked this in another video, but they're only shooting like a little pellet initially. The rifles only shoot like a little steel ball. Is that correct?
Well, it might look small to us, but it's about a 58 caliber bullet, which is over a ½ inch in diameter. And it's moving with enough power behind it that it causes a tremendous amount of damage to human tissue. When it hits bone, it's going to shatter bone instead of going right through it like our modern military weapons do. So that's why you're going to see so many amputations during the Civil War. It does so much damage to the bone and tissue You can't resection very well the bone together, so you have to cut it off above where it was injured, and hopefully that prevents the spread of infection and keeps that soldier alive. But about 55,000 amputations happened during the war.
Wow. Okay, we're going to roll this a little bit longer here. So now we're shooting, we're fighting. When somebody quits, they wave a white flag. Is there some of that, or the people just run and leave? What happens?
A little bit of both. Someplace like at Vicksburg, the whole Confederate army at Vicksburg is going to surrender. So you're talking 30,000 men probably are just going to surrender. And
with the hands up in the air.
Yeah.
Is that a surrender?
Yeah. Instead of sending them to northern prison camps, since those numbers are so huge, they actually make them sign a parole. And they have to stay out of the war until they're exchanged with a Union prisoner. And that takes a while for that to happen. Other battles, like at Gettysburg, when the Confederates lose, they just retreat off the field and come back to Virginia. There's not a surrender there. So it just depends on the situation.
Was there a battle that the Confederates won? Pretty good battle? Or they didn't lose all the time, I'm sure.
No, they won a lot of battles, especially at the beginning of the war. In 1862, Battle of Fredericksburg. In 1863, the Battle of Chancellorsville, Chickamauga in Georgia. Those are big Confederate victories. The problem is they usually didn't have enough momentum to follow up those victories and make them decisive like the North did.
Oh, okay. So now at the property that you're at, when does the battle take place? Tell us a little bit of what happened there.
Sure. So we're what we like to call the beginning of the end of the Civil War. We're just, the battle that happens where our park happens on April 2nd, 1865, which is just 1 week from when Lee surrenders to Grant at Appomattox.
Right.
So this is a very decisive engagement. By breaking through the lines here, just south of Petersburg, it forces Lee to surrender, or not to evacuate Petersburg and the capital in Richmond. And he starts moving westward, and Grant is nipping at his heels the whole way across Virginia until finally he gets in front of him and cuts him off, and he can't retreat any further and forces his surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia on April 9th. And that once Lee surrenders, all the other Confederate armies know that they cannot continue the fight without the best army in the field. So they start.
Now how many people fight in the battle where you're located, would you say? What's the number of soldiers?
So this was a pretty small engagement. There were about 14,000 Union soldiers fighting, and there were about between 2,800 and 3,000 Confederate soldiers trying to defend this line.
That's a big, you can't win that. You ain't got to, unless you got a lot of bullets, you can't win that one. The number's too lopsided, right?
Right. There were too many attackers for the defenders to try to hold off over a mile-wide front. So got overran.
What was there with it at the time? Was it some houses there? Was it a city, or was it just an open field?
Most of it was open field, farmland. There are houses here and there, and we have the historic house here on our property called Tudor Hall Plantation. It was built about 1812 and was here during the battle. Luckily, it didn't sustain much damage because this was a relatively short fight. It only lasted about half an hour.
Oh. Yeah, you got too many people. and then so how did the fight begin? Were the Northerners coming down that way? They saw the 2,800, or did they know in advance? How did it begin?
They knew the defenders were there, but they were trying to get some advantage on them. So they're going to attack real early in the morning and they're going to attack in a sort of V-shaped formation with these soldiers. So when they go through the line, the Confederate defenders, like you said, there's just not enough of them to hold them off. It's kind of like a sledgehammer blow right into the earthworks. And they go in at a place where there's no earthworks, sort of a swampy area. So they used all those things to their advantage, and it was very successful.
Now, was that good strategy or luck, or what was it?
It was good strategy, yeah. The Confederate and Union lines were only about a mile apart from each other, their earthwork lines. So they would be able to look across that open land, and they could see some weak spots in the line that they wanted to make sure that they hit.
You using the term earthworm? Is that the term you're using? What's the term you keep?
Earthworks.
Earthworks. What is that?
Trenches. Sort of like World War I trenches, kind of.
Okay. So they dug
the fight behind
into the ground.
Right.
Oh, I see.
They're fighting behind that to give them some protection.
I got you. And so, is it a sunny day? Is it a rainy day? Do they recount? And that might have made a difference, or any.
They're going to attack at 4:40 in the morning, so it's still almost dark. But it's a cold, chilly, early April day when they attack.
Oh, and so then they attack. Then what happens after the Confederate gives up? Is all the buildings confiscated? How you pronounce that word? And then what happens to the soldiers, the Confederate soldiers at that site?
So yeah, the Confederates are going to retreat into Petersburg eventually, and then that night they're going to cross over the Appomattox River and start heading west to try to get away. But Grant's going to follow them all the way, continue to follow them. Now,
then what happens to the slaves at that location? All of them are free and they're jumping up and dancing and that kind of thing, maybe?
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing when the Union Army comes into Richmond. The enslaved people are going to come out and greet the Union Army and be really, enthusiastic and happy that now they are free.
Because when the Unions show up, when there's a Union guy, you're free, and now you got to figure out what you're gonna do for the rest of your life. But
right,
you're free at this point.
Yeah.
And I guess I had one more question. So now it's over. What happened to the people who own the buildings, the slave owners? They leave too, or they? A lot of them abandoned their houses when the Army moved into this area to try to protect their families. So they moved into the defenses of Petersburg, and then they came back after the battle was over. And of course, they find a lot of damage to their property after the armies have been here for several months. They're going to fight for 292 days around Petersburg, 10 months. So there's a lot of damage that they come back to. Okay, hold on. Now you threw me a loop there. Okay, you said, but at your site, it only lasted for half an hour.
Right. So,
but what do you mean by all those months? They're
fighting for many, many months
prior to the fight at your site.
Right, getting into that position.
Oh, and is that maybe one of the longest battles or something like that in the war?
Yes, certainly the longest. They call it a siege here at Petersburg, the Siege of Petersburg. So it's a long, long time for all this to sort of play out.
And so at the end of the day, the battles lasted. I mean, it's 4 years. That's a nice long war. That's not a short period of time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you're talking 750,000 men who lose their lives during this fight when you combine both the North and the South.
Are there grave sites on your property or in the fields? What happens to the soldiers that are killed at your location?
So they moved those after the war, 1866, 1867, 1868. They dig up the Union soldiers and place them in the National Cemetery that's nearby here. And the Confederate soldiers, they take to a local Blandford Cemetery, a local community cemetery where they're buried.
Wow. And but what happens the day of the war? That's we're coming to an end of my question. What happens the day of when they die?
Oh, they bury them right there on the battlefield.
So somebody comes along and digs up the hole, or that was what one troop, that was their responsibility?
Yeah. And sometimes those burial duties actually went to free blacks, and the Army would pay them to do that. So sometimes it was detailed to them to do those jobs.
Okay, we're coming to a close here, so to speak. What's the mindset of a soldier? I mean, you're just an ordinary guy. And now all of a sudden, I mean, I'm sure it's kind of the same as it is today, but what's the mindset? And you got to do that combat.
Yeah, just like you mentioned, today's soldiers come from a wide range of lives, and these soldiers did too. And they have moments where their patriotism is really high, but then the next day they may get some bad news from home and their patriotism is really low. They may have days where they're sick. They may have days when they're, ready to give up. They may have days where they're just so happy that their side won a battle. There's a lot of up and down with
soldiers. I can't imagine.
And just surviving due to the bad food, the inconsistency of getting clothing, and often poor shelter is a constant threat to their lives, let alone the bullets flying.
I can't imagine. You just an ordinary person, and all of a sudden you was a farmer and picking, doing what you're doing, and now you're called to kill.
Yeah. Well, here at the National Museum of the Civil War Soldier, we really let people understand those soldiers' stories through their own words. So we use those original primary sources of their letters, their journals, their diaries, and we have an audio system where people can go through, as they go through the museum, they learn about these soldiers' lives, one of whom is an African-American soldier. And you get to learn their experiences and get their perspectives.
Well, I guess I got two more questions. What is the soldier saying? Are soldiers crying at this point? In some of these letters, they're saying, I can't wait till this is over. I wish I hadn't have done this, that kind of thing.
All of them want to go home.
Okay.
All of them want to go home. They're tired of this war, tired of this fighting, tired of seeing their friends killed, tired of all the destruction and bloodshed. They just really want to go home. But they want to actually see this through to its end. The Union soldiers especially, they sacrificed a lot, given up a lot. They want to see the country reunited and slavery ended, especially when they see how effective Black soldiers fight during the war.
Did any Black soldiers fight at your location?
They were not here at this battle, but they fought around Petersburg during that 10-month siege on several occasions.
Now, these are Black soldiers from the North.
That's right. Now, some of them are runaway slaves from the South, but they're fighting for the North.
Yeah, okay. Is there a question that I have not asked you per se? Tell us about your location there, the website,
Sure.
How people can come and visit, that kind of thing.
www.pamplinpark.org. Our website has a lot of good information on it, but I do encourage people to come see us. You don't get the full effect from the website of what all you get to learn here. And if you can, plan on spending a good 6 or 7 hours here, because there's plenty of stuff to do between the National Museum of the Civil War Soldier, Tudor Hall Plantation, and the Breakthrough Battlefield here. There's tons of stuff to do and learn. So
how do you get there? What do you?
We're just right off of I-85 outside of Petersburg.
Okay.
And highway signs that will direct you right here from I-85.
So, okay. So, do you all have festivals or reenactments and that kind of thing at certain times?
We've got a special events page on our website. So
okay.
Look at that, and like us on Facebook and keep up with us.
Okay. Last, how did you get the name? Was the property name that way, or the?
Pamplin Historical Park is a father and son, and they're the ones that built this park, and it is on their ancestors' home ground here.
Oh, so, got you. That's the doctor or something I read about.
Dr. Pamplin, yes.
Yeah, I see. But it wasn't called that back then.
No, it was the Boysaw family who owned this property at that time.
Oh, I got you.
Related to the Pamplins.
I got you. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to be on Strong Inspirations and giving it to us like you did, because you really answered my questions very succinctly and what have you, and that you do what you do to keep this part of. How does this make you feel doing that every day, knowing?
It's great, especially working with kids and you see those light bulbs go off.
Yeah.
Questions. It's very inspirational to me. It helps me keep doing what I do.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you again so much for being on the channel, and everybody. I told you, I told you he was gonna blow your mind. My man's smiling, and he did a good job. I thank you for being on Strong Inspirations and giving it to us as you have. Everybody, come on, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell. Check out the website. It's going to be on there, and when the viruses kind of calm down and things like that, we're going to check it out. We're going to come through. And I say to you, my friend, stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, doing what you do. I really appreciate you. And everybody, we out. Have a good day. Bye-bye.